The 76ers have a huge opportunity ahead of them as we enter the 2025 NBA offseason, and I think the Sixers have a better chance than most people would believe to compete in the Eastern Conference just next season, and I'm going to explain why here on today's 76ers Now. Before we get into it, we are very close to reaching a pretty big milestone here on the channel, just 59 subs away from 22K. Can we get there here on today's show? We've surpassed that sub number a couple times within the last week. I think we can do it again. If you're looking for a place for Sixers coverage almost every single day as we head into this busy offseason, one that Shams Charania said could be the craziest offseason of all time in the NBA, hit that sub button and join us here on 76ers Now. So the Eastern Conference, I think, could be wide open next year and really open for the taking. And a team like the Sixers, who obviously were at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings this past year, really have a chance to rise and be one of the better teams in those standings and maybe try to make their first conference finals since 2001. When I look at the landscape of the East, not talking about the Sixers here, but the other teams in the Eastern Conference, I really only see three true contending teams. Teams that, as we head into next year, and of course, two of these, and the Knicks and Pacers are playing right now in the conference finals, are teams that could contend to win the East. It's the Cavs, the Knicks, and the Pacers. Of course, the Cavs, I know they're pretty consistently choking in the playoffs, but they have a very talented roster and still a very young roster with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. It's a great team, right? They'll be right back in there, at least in the regular season standings. And then, of course, the Knicks and the Pacers, as I mentioned, in the conference finals right now. Two talented teams that should be pretty much the same rosters as they head into next season. But outside of those three teams, I think there's some other teams that could be dropping off that we are used to see being at the top of the East. Most notably, the Celtics and the Bucks. Obviously, Boston not going to have Jayson Tatum for all of next year, we're assuming, with his Achilles injury, and they're going to have to make some changes to that roster with the amount of money they're spending in the tax in the second aprons. Sounds like Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, or maybe both of them could be off this team's roster next year as they not rebuild, but kind of gear up for 2027 when Jayson Tatum does return. And then Milwaukee, we don't know what's going on with Giannis, if he'll be there, if he won't. If he gets traded to a Western Conference team, all of a sudden the Bucks are going to be one of the worst teams in the East. Plus, Damian Lillard also tore his Achilles, so he will not be there for Milwaukee next year. Whether Giannis is back or not, that's another team that you don't expect to be quite as good as we are used to seeing them. So again, two powerhouses that, could they still make the playoffs? Sure, but not quite those top-tier teams we're seeing. Now, there are a couple of young teams on the rise that I like quite a lot that showed in the playoffs this year, especially in Detroit's case, that they will be rising threats in this Eastern Conference. So the Pistons, obviously, with Cade Cunningham and that whole squad, and then the Magic with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, going to be two teams to watch out for, but I wouldn't really label them as true contenders right now, while the teams are still so young. And then the rest of the East, I really don't see as contenders at all. Miami has fallen off without Jimmy Butler. I don't really see where they go from here. Atlanta, some good talent on the roster, but never really able to put it all together. I don't really see them as a true threat. Same with Chicago, the Raptors, and then, of course, the Nets, Hornets, Wizards, three teams that are going to be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, you assume, again next season. So, look, we just went through the entire Eastern Conference outside of the Sixers, and I really only saw three teams as we look ahead in next year that are real threats, again, in my opinion, to win the East. The East might not be this weak for quite a while. It's not very often that you see maybe the two best players in the conference in Tatum and Giannis probably not going to be in the picture for those teams next season. And yeah, the Celtics are still a talented team, and the Bucks, what could they get back for Giannis? They'll probably get a big haul of picks and or players, and they could still compete. But there's really an opportunity here for a team like the Sixers, who have a lot of talented players, but obviously had a very disappointing year, to bounce back and take advantage of a weaker conference, especially when you look at what there is out west compared to what there is out east. If the Sixers team can meet expectations, or at least the expectations they had coming into last year, they could easily be a 1, a 2 seed out in the East and try to make that deep playoff run. Now, it's not going to be easy. It's not a guarantee by any means, of course. But depending on what they do this offseason, and we'll go through some of why, this upcoming offseason is going to be so important and some of the different moves they can make to get there, they do have a chance to make some noise in a season that will be very important to capitalize on before the East does come back to prominence, with some of these younger teams as well getting better. So predict it for me as we stand right now, Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. Obviously, the whole offseason still ahead of us and teams can look different. But as of right now, where do you think the Sixers will finish in the East? It could be first. It could be all the way dead last at 15th. Hopefully not. I would, again, not have a good time watching this team if they're the worst team in the East. But predict it for me down in the comment section. Of course, when we talk about how this team can capitalize and get back to being one of the better teams in the East, it really all just comes down to Joel Embiid and his health. We talk a lot in the show, and, obviously it's important to talk about the different moves this team can make and the players they can acquire via free agency, draft, trades, different guys that can improve to get this team where they want to be. But at the end of the day, if Embiid isn't healthy, it's really, really difficult to picture this team winning a championship. So you need to really hope that Embiid can get back to that level, especially because when you look at the West compared to the East, the West has way more talent, and Embiid could honestly be the best player in the Eastern Conference if he's even close to 100%. Out West, you got, obviously, and this is not in any specific order, so don't come after me saying this guy's above this guy. I'm just naming players here. Jokic, SGA, Steph, Anthony Edwards, Luka and LeBron, Kevin Durant, obviously Devin Booker in there as well, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler. Like, the list goes on and on and on. I could keep naming guys out in the Western Conference. We'd be here all day if I kept going through all these guys. And then you compare it to the guys out East. I'm not including any Sixers players here, but Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Halliburton, Cade Cunningham, Paolo and Franz. You got Kat, Trae Young, Bam Adebayo, Jaylen Brown. I'm not listing Tatum or Giannis here either because we don't know if they're going to be playing next year. At least in Tatum's case, we know he probably won't be. Giannis, we'll see. Like, this group of players, yeah, it's a great group of guys out East. It doesn't touch the group of players out West with way more high-end talent and way more depth. The West is an absolute bloodbath, and we've seen that throughout the playoffs the last few years. So look, Embiid realistically could be the best player in the East next season. I don't think it's that far-fetched to say that because of the talent or the lack thereof that there could be in that conference if Giannis is traded and Tatum does miss all of next season. So again, I don't think they need him to be like the 35-point-per-game scorer that he was when he won MVP, but if he can be dominant in stretches, right? Maybe not dominant the whole season, but dominant in stretches and at least be available for this team for, say, 60 games, something around there, the Sixers could easily win 50-plus games and be one of the better teams in the East. But look, it's not just Embiid. They obviously need to still improve other areas of this team, and where they have a really big advantage over some of these other contending teams in the East is that draft pick, that third overall pick. It's pretty rare for a team with this much talent in their position who are going to be looking to contend next year to have a pick this high in the draft. You look at where all the other East teams that are in the lottery are picking. The Sixers at third overall, out of all the East teams, they have the highest pick in this draft. Of course, they're behind the Spurs and the Mavericks. Then you look at the other teams in the lottery. Hornets at fourth, they stink. Wizards at sixth, they stink. Nets at eighth, like they're not going to be contending at all next year. Raptors at ninth, got some talent there, but they're not a championship or Eastern Conference contender. Bulls at 12th, Hawks at 13th. Those are all the Eastern Conference teams that have lottery picks. None of those other teams, I think, are really going to be competing for a top 6 playoff seed next year. So the Sixers are in a unique situation where they can compete for a playoff spot and have the third overall pick. Now, you look at some of the other contending teams in the East and where they're drafting. Magic, 16 and 25. That's 2 good picks for a team like that, but it's not pick 3. Indiana at 23. Boston at 28. Like, there's no other contending team that has a first-round pick. The Knicks don't have a pick. Bucks don't have a pick. Cavs don't have a pick. So the Sixers, again, a very unique opportunity here as a contending team, hopefully, with a high draft pick. Now, I am still going to draft Ace Bailey at 3 overall if I'm Philadelphia. Some people might find that counterintuitive because Ace Bailey is kind of considered this lower floor, higher ceiling kind of guy that might not be able to contribute right away. I disagree. I think he can contribute right away, not to the high-end level that he might be able to in a few years, but at the end of the day, he's a tough shot maker. He can get buckets, and the Sixers could absolutely use that on this roster. Now, if you are kind of against the idea of taking someone like that at number 3, I'm also intrigued by the idea of trading down to number 8. With the Nets, they move up to 3. Sixers move down to 8 and add Cam Johnson. You trade away Kelly Oubre, Andre Drummond, bring in Cam Johnson. That's another great avenue you could use to still get a talented and young player at 8, but add a veteran and a proven scorer like Cam Johnson in that trade. Also, Philadelphia has young, cheap players that can play. When you think about the construction of their team, right? Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, making so much money, it's important to have guys under team control at low salary numbers that you trust out there on the floor. And I think the Sixers have 4 of those guys in the roster right now, not counting who they're going to add in the draft at number 3 and at number 35. Obviously, Jared McCain, hopefully coming off that injury, can be that 6th man ideally who's getting buckets. You still have Ricky Council, Justin Edwards, who's a UDFA who looked tremendous, and Adem Bona, all making $5 million or less each. So it's very important to have that young talent that's also super affordable. And then really, can you get anything from Paul George this season? If you can get a healthy year out of him, Paul George said he was never healthy from the start, and going into next year, he hopes to be healthy. I'm skeptical, but we'll see. If you can get anything from him, doesn't need to be all-star level production, but efficient play, a little bit better attacking the basket and on the defensive side than he was last year, man, I think this team really would have a chance to compete in the Eastern Conference. So to kind of put a bow on everything and bring everything together, I think this Philadelphia 76ers team has a chance to compete in the Eastern Conference at a higher level than a lot of people might think. Again, with the way the conference is right now, and the Boston Celtics having the Jayson Tatum injury and a lot of money tied up with guys they're going to have to trade away, and the Milwaukee Bucks with the Giannis rumors. Is he going to be there next year? Damian Lillard not going to play as well with his injury. The Eastern Conference is kind of wide open for the taking. The Cavs, the Pacers, the Knicks, really the only other 3 true contending teams I see in that conference. And if the Sixers can just get a healthy Joel Embiid, who is playing at a dominant level, maybe not for a whole season, but at least in spurts, and they're able to add some talent in the draft and surround Embiid and Maxey and McCain and Grimes with these talented players, I think they have a better shot than most people think to make some noise and potentially make a run to at least the Eastern Conference Finals next season. But we're going to have to see it, right? And with this team, especially heading into last year, it was like, yeah, the team looks great, and we were so confident heading into the year, and then what happened? As Tyrese Maxey said, it was a whole lot of, well, we look good on paper, but we're not actually putting it out there, right? The team has to put it out there, and it starts with what they do in this offseason, with potentially bringing in, again, someone at the top of the draft, potentially making a move. Whatever they do this offseason, they really got to figure it out because they have a big opportunity this offseason, man. They really, really do. It's not a lot of years that the East is going to be this weak with these injuries and these trades. The Western Conference, they're going to be taking each other out. All you got to worry about is that East, and I think they really do have a chance at that. Be sure, once again, to hit that sub button. As I mentioned earlier, multiple NBA insiders like Shams Charania are reporting that this is going to be one of the craziest off seasons of all time. The Sixers, with that 3rd overall pick, going to be right in the thick of things. So do not miss a beat. Hit that sub button and turn on your notifications so you stay caught up with everything going on with the Philadelphia 76ers.